Hey y'all, CB here at NBS Welding. Got a little quick project. Buddy of mine brought me a drive shaft. It's for a mud truck that he's building, and it's kind of controversial. It's been a controversial thing for decades with people about can you shorten a drive shaft? Can you build a drive shaft out of parts with just a welder? Do you have to have a lathe? Do you have to put a dial indicator on it? Blah, blah, blah. Look, it depends. It depends on the vehicle, the use of the vehicle, the length of the drive shaft, and a lot of different stuff. Any guy that works in a drive shaft shop that chucks up drive shafts on a regular basis, puts a dial indicator on them, gets them perfectly straight or as straight as can be, and welds them up, is going to tell you that any guy that does that for a living is going to tell you that you should never build drive shafts without doing it that way. But in the last 30 years, I couldn't tell you how many times on homemade sorts of trucks where drive shafts were really short and things were being modified, where guys cut a drive shaft with a cutting wheel, shortened it up, put it back together, got it as straight as they could, welded it up, and it was fine. You know, if it's an old Jeep or a mud truck or a really big truck like a log truck or something, you know, like that doesn't go that fast, and especially if the drive shaft is not very long, then you absolutely have a decent chance of being able to get that thing straight enough without putting it in a lathe and chucking it up and running a dial indicator on it and all that. And there's another theory too, you know, even when drive shaft technicians build these drive shafts and get them perfectly straight in a lathe with a dial indicator, a lot of times when they weld them up, the heat of welding changes it, and they're still fine. Let me show you the drive shaft I got in here now. Obviously, this is a pretty short drive shaft. That piece of tubing is about 1 foot long. It's a buddy of mine modifying a mud truck. This is probably, you know, he's got the thing fit together best he could. I said, is it straight enough? He said, oh yeah, it's good, just weld it. That's all he wants me to do is weld it. Good, bad, or indifferent. All he wants me to do is weld it, and all I'm going to do is weld it. Now, there's a couple things about welding it that I will pay attention to, and one is the way I tack it. I'm not going to go with a crazy huge tack all on one side all of a sudden and stand here and smoke a cigarette. If you do that, you stand a chance of pulling it. I want to put 3 or 4 tacks on this thing as fast as I can before it really gets time to draw one way or the other. I want to make a tack, go straight across from there, make a tack, make another tack, make another tack, and I want like 4 tacks on this thing as quick as I can get it tacked up. And the other thing about the tacks is I'm not gonna stand there for a long time and try to hump up a lot of metal with the tack. If I do that, then I got to deal with welding over top of that hump. And I have a welding positioner, so that's how I'm going to be welding. Once I start welding on it, hopefully if there's no issues, I'm going to weld all the way around it without stopping. That's another thing that may or may not help it as far as staying straight and not drawing more one direction. Another thing is, I have heard of guys welding these up with a 3/32 7018 or something because all they had to weld it with was a stick welder. That may be fine, but I'll tell you, you got more chance of drawing it and misshaping it with a 3/32 7018 stick welder than you do a MIG. You know, your MIG welder is going to get in there and get it done and get out of there with the least amount of heat possible, and that's probably the best, as long as penetration and strength is adequate, which it will be. So this is one of these things where it's going to look like I'm done in a second. It's like when I was in school, my stepdad had a farm where I lived with my mom and my stepbrothers and my stepdad, and For quite a while we had turkeys out there. We had these two turkeys, Tom and Clarabelle, and I remember this time of year, you know, Tom would get his Tom on and he'd get all puffed up and he'd push his feathers out and he's strutting around, he'd strut around for an hour. But then when him and Claire would actually do it, it would be like they'd bump together and that was it. They just did the sex they needed to do to make baby turkeys. And I always thought about how funny that was. He got all puffed up and strutted around for an hour, but when it actually came down to doing it, it was like, boom, we're done. So I guess that's how turkeys do it. I don't know. But that's how Tom and Claire did. And it was kind of like, that's how this drive shaft welding's going to go. I've been goofing around here for 15 minutes. You know, I found a piece of pipe about the size of the drive shaft. I chucked it up in the welding positioner. I've adjusted the heat on the welder. I've adjusted the speed of turning the positioner close as I can get it. I've been messing around. But if I've got all those settings right, when I weld this up, it'll be like bam and it's done, you know. So be kind of like the way Tom done. Let's weld the drive shaft. Well, there we go. Welded the drive shaft. Thanks for watching. Learn how to work with what you got. That way you always have everything you need. Hey y'all, we're coming to you from the break room here at MBS Welding. I want to show you the t-shirts we got. The MBS Welding t-shirts got MBS Welding on the front, American flag on the sleeve, great big MBS Welding here on the back. Helps the channel if you buy a t-shirt. If you're interested in a t-shirt, send Tina an email request, nbswelding@aol.com. Thank you.